SROs in the schools. And I'd like to just say that's some of the stuff that, some of the questions that generated here developed into discussions for work, and we actually implemented the SROs in the schools and the K-9 and got some of the K-9 equipment. So, and a lot of that discussion came out of the discussions that are taking place here. So what I do want to do is encourage people to ask us questions at any time. And this is kind of free-flowing. It's kind of a broad topic where we have the public safety, we have the planning process for emergency management that you see here. All of these people participate in it. So, does anybody have any questions off the top?
I just wanted to say the incident that happened at the high school, I thought the way the community handled the communication was, it was a horrible thing. It worked out fine. It was so great. It made me feel so good. I was like, it's such a terrible thing, but boy, you knew what was going on. You knew everyone was on top of it. I really commend everyone because it was excellent.
Well, thank you. I'll tell you, I can't thank you.
It was Nemlec Fire and Police.
That was a little bit more involved situation than realized. This were cameras in our schools. It's going to be one of our proposals coming up. It's proposed about 8 years ago. We went able to fund our cameras in the schools are about central. This young lady was passing routine. She had everything here. One classroom. Right out of the people suffer in the hallway. Sitting from the first period, second period class. But within about 30 minutes, we were under law enforcement, public safety, fire department officials here, 3 helicopters, 2 ATVs, K-9 units, kudos to the public safety. I thought that would be the best in our area.
Thank you, Bill, for saying that. But again, like the topic that we're discussing here is part of that planning process. And usually what we're dealing with are the events, like the weather events that we've been dealing with for the last, seems to be getting worse over the last couple of years. But what we've done is we've put together a team, and it's, some people aren't even here. It's police, fire, board of health, schools, highway, building, town government, and what we do, so there's a lot of moving parts when these storms come in and we have to deal with it, and we've learned to include the utilities for obvious reasons because that's some of our biggest concerns. And when I talk about the planning process, it usually we have, with some of the storms, we have some advance notice that we're going to get hit with a storm, a hurricane, or whatnot. And we start immediately. We have emergency management meetings at the police station. We have an EOC, and we meet regularly, sometimes twice a day, with all the local officials, just to kind of get up to speed, know what we have to do, and check all those boxes to get ready for this event. And it is a pretty wide-ranging, it affects everybody. We have to worry about the schools. We have to worry about the sheltering, provide enough fire response, ambulance response, highway. Without a doubt, they do an unbelievable job for us. So we're very fortunate to have Chip's crew during these storms because they do an amazing job for us. But it's just, it all comes together, and it's part of a process that we've done. And we've been very successful with it. And unfortunately, practice makes perfect. We're getting pretty good at it over the last couple of years with the amount of storms. Now, some of the new stuff that we've already incorporated into our emergency planning is Chris's application with GIS. And what we're doing is, as we have reports coming in to us with downed wires, trees down, intersections blocked, we are actually plotting on a map in the EOC where these problems occur. So this is just one storm and one indication. I know you're far away, but we've had over 150 wires down during that 2011 storm, and it wreaked havoc for electricity for the community. At one point, we were at 98%, and part of that, what kicks in with that is we have to open shelters. And Sandy will go into what it takes to open up a shelter and the personnel that she and her group bring to the table. We have to provide safety and security at those shelters. And Chip has to get his crew up and running, fed, enough sleep so they can get right back out to it. But that event there, it was 150 something trees down, wires down, and I think at one point, Jody, we had 33 roads blocked. And one of the things that the manager has brought into it is included the utilities, and we have the utility companies, their liaisons in the room. So as we're getting the information, they're getting the information, and they're getting that information out to the crews. We're getting better at corralling them. A couple of storms, if a community was hit, we'd see a large response first, and then a couple of trucks in the area. But Jody put her foot down on that, and that doesn't happen anymore. So, but it's been really helpful. But it's a team effort. Some of the things that people really don't take into account is when we get hit with these storms is our communications. What we try to do is get that information out to you as much as we do it many different ways. We have a Twitter account, we have a Facebook account, we do the code red, the call outs, those auto calls, we do the message boards, Bill will do Connect Ed, so in case we miss somebody, Bill will do the Connect Ed, we do, and we've got a lot of feedback with the Twitter and the Facebook accounts, and that's been all positive. But some of the new stuff that we're bringing into the whole process is the AM radio station. And that's something that we're trying to do, because when we lose power, people lose their internet, they lose their phones, and we were looking at other ways to get that information out, other than just looking at the signboard in the middle of the common to kind of direct people where to go. And we've been very successful with that, but does anybody have any other well, I have, and the fire chief, depending on the emergency, the situation. If we need to get information out, we'll put it out. We run it by the manager, so there is a criteria. So we try not to bother people as much as possible, but we need to get the information out. That storm there, if everybody remembers correctly, we had multiple days of no school, and that's a tough decision to make, because if you say no school, it puts the parents out. Somebody's going to stay home with them. But what we were dealing with were hundreds of wires down, and when we had the utilities in the room, my question always was, is it safe enough to let our kids go to the bus stop? And if they couldn't give me we weren't an okay for that, we weren't comfortable with that. So he said, give it one more day. Give it another day. So we just wanted to make sure. And some of the creative ways that we came about checking these lines, we used highway people to check the routes. Bill used his bus drivers to check the routes of all the bus stops to make sure there wasn't any down wires. But we all worked together on this to make sure that this thing, it would work out, and it did.
Quick question, it sounds as if the process for identifying if the wires are down is a manual process. Is that correct?
It really is.
There's no electronic, automated way of working with utilities to be able to...
They don't have that technology. It may look like they're way out there.
The question was, is there an automatic way for the utilities to just tell us where the power is? And what they just tell us is it's a transmission line, and that transmission line goes down 110 to Concord Road into the village. So they can tell us that, but they can't tell us exactly where the break is or what the extent of the break is.
One of the best things if you do have a no power situation, first thing to do is go over and turn on your front light. That's how the power company knows you have power. There is no other way. First thing you can do to help yourself out, they may think they've energized the line, but there may be other breaks in that line or other fuses that are gone. First thing to do to help yourselves out is to help us out. Just go over and turn your front light on. If that front light's on, both police, fire, highway, and the power company will know your power's back on.
So
That's how automated it is.
So, yeah, that's how we're getting things done. But another way that we were dealing with it, and some of the other concerns was dealing with the elderly. And we had police and fire physically knocking on the door of people. We work with the Council on Aging, get a list of people that have some concerns, and we'll go out and physically check on them. We've had firefighters, police officers shovel walkways. Responding to ambulance calls during these events is very difficult, but we have to plan for that. That's why we need the extra crews on. Think of anything else, Joe?
I'd like to know, just out of curiosity, if there's, how do people hear about emergencies and what's their normal way of checking? Because we have all this redundant communication across the town, hopefully grabbing everybody and that they have some way of finding out what's going on. But we're wondering whether there's something that most people listen to or look for. How do you, when you are wondering, what's your normal source of trying to?
Do you think we're getting the message out to you good enough? Or is there some lag pieces that you can help us identify that we can help plan for our future?
I got a personal call from the town manager.
Well, you're the exception, and you're one household. But
And I call
there's a
her,
lot of other
she
people
calls
that
you.
are
I
out
think
there.
we all have listservs that we send out if we have electricity. A lot of people have listservs, but we were going to say,
I feel like they made a change in the last storm. The storms sometimes fall together this time of year for me, but I remember a lot of parents being frustrated because the town of Westford website didn't have, and then like you heard it written Facebook, and we were all like, really, we have to find out what goes on through the Facebook, which I think is fine if that's the method, but there really wasn't. I don't remember it being clear for the most updated information. I almost don't think that we found it redundant. We found it conflicting.
Okay.
It wasn't all the same.
Yeah, because I think we had before like a scroll that used to go across, right?
And
I
that's,
can't remember, like I said, I feel like it changed in the last one, but before, you know, you go different places and
we actually identified that as one of the issues that we wanted to address. We didn't want multiple messages being put out by town hall, police, fire, highway. We all have a bunch of stuff that we want to say. Is basically keep off the roads. Let's don't park on the roads. Let the highway clear the roads as much as possible. But we've been trying to identify that, and thank you very much for that comment.
I mean, they're definitely trying. It's a hard one, but you know, to keep it all. But I think if it's just if we know there's one place, you know, it's the same as the school website. You always go to the main page, but they were probably still, you know.
And that was some of the
Came
problems.
first, you know.
Yeah, that was some of the problems that we trying to identify. Some of the shelters with cell phones, charging strips, like little things like that. Getting multiple charging strips so people could charge their computers, their cell phones. So we were scrambling for stuff like that, and it's add that thing to the things to do list next time.
We've already bought them.
Yeah.
For next time.
So Chip made mention about our AM radio station, and what the town did is, and Jody in emergency management, Joe, do you want to touch on that?
Yeah. I got you on my radio. In my ear. The AM radio is going to be more of a on-demand thing, so we don't have to use the code red system, especially if like you get down to from 70% of the town has an issue or no power, and you have 40%, 30% as it starts to go down, you information on there instead of doing the code red and sending it out to everybody, especially where it's sporadic. You know, if it's just pocket bullets, that's all. It's one thing, we can do it by mapping on our program, but otherwise it goes to the whole town. So, the AM radio, you know, as things change, we can do a recorded message on that, and we're gonna get started on that in July as soon as the new budget comes in.
So we're waiting, the hurricane season's coming, we're waiting to get that up and running, and it's similar to that you see in the highways. Tune into this channel for emergency information. So we're looking for people to do that, so we don't have to keep pushing out because that code red takes a lot of work to push out. And some of the problems that we have identified, quite frankly, is it takes a couple hours to push all that message out. So it's
not
for all the calls.
instantaneous like
It's
that.
not. It's not instant, so it will push out calls and keep pushing out calls. But you think you're getting it, and your neighbor may not get it for another hour or so. So that's some of the stuff that, in an immediate emergency, we want people to get that information in some place so everybody can get it at the same time. And that's why we've identified that AM radio station to get that message out.
I think part of that is every emergency that we have, a storm or a significant event that we have for the town, we critique ourselves. So afterwards, we're meeting with ourselves. We do an after-action report as to what worked, what didn't work, what feedback that we were already hearing from maybe the public, and so we can have lessons learned as to what we can do better to get the messages out or do things internally to help the public. Whether it's bringing meals to the elderly or some other type of service that we can get it out to the public better. So we're always critiquing ourselves on every time we do it.
And I have to say that people don't realize how much goes into a decision on whether to open up a shelter or not. And then how to get the message out to people that's either open for people coming in and using it as a shelter or using it as a warming station or a charging station. So, every time we've had a large storm, unfortunately we've had 2 instances in the last, how many years have we had to open up the shelters?
It's 2008.
2 shelters that have lasted almost a week, and that takes staffing 24/7. Tommy mentioned that we have the Upper Merrimack Valley Medical Reserve Corps, which is we're lucky to have in this area. It's 550 members of a volunteer response team that train and get pre-credentialed and quarried and all that stuff before an event happens, and we've been able to tap into them to staff our shelters 24/7 for that amount of time. But it's a lot of work, and you have to do a call out and get all that information out. So it takes some pre-planning, and as soon as we are sit together at the Emergency Operations Center, the EOC that Tom and Rich are talking about, that decision is looked on very heavily. Do we want to open up a shelter, which we then have to be responsible for the people in it? How do we make sure in between events the residents know what they should be doing, so that if you have to come to a shelter, you know what you should be bringing? Your elderly and the high-risk people in the community, they need to be identified, and we need to make sure they know to have medications on hand and water and supplies. We sell the 72-hour kits in town, which is unusual for a community, so that's a great way to do it. And there's an AM, FM radio that's cranked that you can use to log on to that the AM radio station that the channel that they're getting, which is a great way of doing it. But a lot of the stuff takes the responsibility of the community to become prepared on your own. We've just recently received funding for a pet grant and have done pet sheltering and actually did a drill just a couple of weeks ago to make sure that we could potentially have a pet shelter if somebody is trying to have to shelter and they have animals at home. So there's a lot of work going behind the scenes that I don't think people are aware of. We've identified a lot of it on this sheet, but there's a lot more. The library opens, it's not on here, but the library opens their site if there is electricity for people to come in and charge. What were you mentioning on the GI? What's that?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do we have a location set up for a pet shelter?
It's part of the Blanchard right now, but the problem is, and we say that that's the designated shelter, is General Shell, but you never know, depending on what the event, if we can use that facility. Right now, that's our primary site, and that's where all of our planning, we've been planning for almost 6-8 years, and we have a shelter plan, we have a pet plan now. We've run our staff through so that they practice, they know what to do and what they, what will have to happen if something were to occur. But right now, the Blanchard is the designated shelter for the town as our primary site.
I'm Bridget Boyden, and in our neighborhood, we never lost power in either one of those stores. Our power never went.
Lucky.
We were partly lucky, but also all our utilities were underground.
Yep.
So I look at what one time being totally dug up. Are there plans like to get work companies and get power cable and everything put underground?
Well,
Chip might have that.
We're working with a power company to address that. In the past, all the wires are above ground, and they still are. And it's very expensive to put them underground. Bottom line is how do we make that service that's above ground work better for us? And working with the National Grid Arborists in the last 5 years, there are 2 plans that have been put in place in Westford. One of them is a hazardous tree mitigation program. Well, they'll go down and they'll bring their professional arborists in and take a look at any tree along a circuit that they designate, and they'll actually go in there and either trim that tree or remove that tree if it was dead, whether it was either on town property or on people's properties. And that really saves. We lose the power because trees falling on them. The other process is there's not enough money. There's not enough money in the world. There's going to be, and the underground has a lifespan. All the stuff that's buried underneath the ground is going to have to be dug up someday. And that has an impact. How do we make it work now is really what we're trying to do. The other thing is they have a program, instead of coming in like they did 10 years ago and just cutting the heck out of the trees and exposing this big wide open space around their wires, they're coming in more frequently on the circuits and cutting windows and going around maintaining their systems like that. They have they've probably doubled or tripled the amount of tree maintenance that they've done, which also helps the highway department because we can't do that work anyway around the wires. So we're getting a double bang for the buck. The bottom line is we're losing power because the trees are falling on them, and we've made steps to try to mitigate that to a minimum. We love our trees, we need to live with them also.
Is there any plan to get National Grid to come back and do that maintenance plan and do that?
No, they are. They're doing a circuit right now. There's 150 miles of road in Westford, and there's circuits going all over. They prioritize them and they divide it up. At any one time, I could probably tell you in town where there is a tree crew working,
Okay, so I live in a part of town that loses power. And then we're out for like 5 or 7 days. So, yeah, I'll ask you that.
I have one question. Is there any consideration for auxiliary units or people to volunteer to assist the departments during these events? And we have discussed some of that to take place. Getting more people involved, more residents involved. Actually, during the search for the young girl, people were calling up asking if they could assist with a search party. And we weren't at that stage yet, but we were getting close. So we were actually thinking about that. But on some of the other events, yes.
And it's not as easy as what people think, that if something happens, we call them spontaneous volunteers, who just want to come to a site. That can actually be more of a hassle and a problem for a community because you don't know who the people are. I happened to help out when Katrina happened down at Otis, and they had people coming and showing up saying they were physicians because they wanted to be involved, and they weren't. So one of the advantages of having, our group is a medical and non-medical. There's other things called CERT teams. There's something called VIPS, which is they're all under Citizens Corps, and they're all different types of groups. But they're all based on the same idea that people pre-register, they get them credentialed, and then when the time comes, they can call on them to help out. So it's not as easy as just saying let everyone in town come and help. You sometimes can get in the way of the professionals who are trying to do their job, and You know, when Oklahoma bombing came out, some of the people that got hurt and somebody who died was a nurse who ran in to try to help out and wasn't trained to do that. So it really is a bigger consideration that most people don't think about, but it is being looked into.
I think we've touched upon that. One of the things that I do want to move on to is building security. And this is another issue that we're dealing with. I know schools, fire, town offices, everybody in the town, we have taken an initiative. We have regular meetings to touch upon school safety issues, building safety issues, and we're really looking at these items very closely. We meet under law, under statute, I believe it's chapter 69, 8A. Don't ask me why I know that, but we have to meet once a year with the superintendent of schools, police and fire, to make sure the schools have safety plans in place to deal with medical emergencies. That goes on. We've recently, and we've also developed plans within the schools' security issues and policies. We meet with Bill and his staff, and we touch upon, you know, the importance of accessibility to the schools. So we have been discussing that issue, but we're also rolling that into town buildings as well. And you think, well, why do you need town building security? And we do. I mean, town hall is open to a lot of people. It's open at night. There are concerns about that. Some of the new additions that we put into town hall, some of the stuff that was put into it, very helpful to us was the camera system, so we can see if anybody's in the hall or in the building, and that's wired to the station. So just an added bit of security for the town hall. But we actually have to start looking at these items, as Bill said, for other buildings in town, schools, and some of the challenges that we meet, just the environmental designs, the old schools versus the new schools. We have, and to put a outlet in one of the older schools is quite a challenge because of the cinder block construction. So these are the things that we're actually having open discussion about. And I'm kind of wondering, is there any feeling on that about from you?
So I had to express concern at my son's school post December 14th, which was shocking to me, that we were just able to enter his school. And I addressed it with the principal, and it was addressed again to be clarified. Me and several other parents have found that it's just very easy to get into the school. You ring the doorbell, but it just seems like it's a little bit lax. You know, personally as a parent, I would love to be asked for my ID. I would love to be checked a little more before that door is just opened. So equipment is definitely needed. I agree with the security, but I think personnel as well. And I was actually a little surprised that the school staff was a little more concerned with the safety. So I was just wondering if there are any programs planned to do a little more training for them.
Well, know that, first of all, you know that you're not automatically buzzed in. That, you know, that you appear before a camera.
Right.
And that your image is very clearly visible on a monitor in the office. So if you are a parent who is in the school, has a child in the school or children in the school, we know you've been reliable, and we see your face, for the most part, you're going to be let in. What we have told the staff is, if you don't know anyone, don't automatically buzz them in. If they have an unusual look about them, if they're unusually dressed, if they're carrying a backpack of any sort, some bags, make sure you get up and physically check and see what they're carrying, or are interested in bringing this to school and what their business is. We've been very careful, particularly after Newtown, because we met with all of the administrators immediately after that to make sure certain procedures were in place. And one of those, the very first procedures was don't automatically buzz the parent into a school, and don't allow, if there are 3 or 4 in a line, don't allow all 3 or 4 of them to get through until I want each one of them buzzed in separate. Other than that, all of the other doors around the buildings are locked. It's is we have the school resource officer, who we mostly use at the high school, spends a considerable amount of time also in our other buildings, going around and testing all of the doors in all the buildings, going through our lockdown procedures. We sit down with the school resource officer, the chief, and the fire chief, and debrief about what went right and what didn't go right in terms of the lockdown procedures. So if you're getting into a school easily, I need to know about it, because that's got to stop.
He said it was addressed when it was the first time that I went to the school, and that's what we wasn't. He doesn't look scary by any means, so just something to read.
Because I would tell you, there was a person, and I can understand the complaint at a recent school committee meeting, that complained about not being able to take a paper or a lunch or something down to his child's classroom. But that's because school security. They may know you, but that's what we have to do.
I think what we've dealt with, the years that everybody roamed through the school, and we can remember, our parents just walking into the classroom saying, Tom, can you come here for a minute? I got your lunch. Or, those days are gone. And it's unfortunate that we're there, but I think over the last several years there have been some absolutely game-changing events that have taken place that have changed the way that schools have to operate. And when you say that about if you see somebody in the hallway, I met with Bill's staff and I said, I know it doesn't feel right, but as a parent, and I have children that have went through the schools here, and I have a child that's in the schools now, I want to be confronted. I feel as though you sign in and, I want a staff member to come up to me and say, can I help you? Are you here? Give me some direction. So I think that's important.
You address what you do on election day.
Yes.
I walk in and out on election day completely unchallenged all the time.
What school?
Election.
One of the things that we do with the election day is, I know the staff, the principals, we talk to them. They all know what's going on with election day and that it's open to election. But we try to section off some of the main corridors. Bill and the staff, the custodial staff, sometimes, and I know he's working on this. That's one of the issues that we have, the dividers, to say, okay, only the gym area is open.
Students walking down that main corridor in the Blanchard all the time.
And I know that was one of the issues with the principal asking about it. And back in the day, nobody wanted to hold the elections at their schools because of the accessibility. We're looking at that as well, as far as cordoning off those areas.
That's one of the biggest challenges we have on campus. Even at the middle school, parents voters come in and walk down the hallway. We have a person in that hallway generally watching where voters travel. But in a place like the Blanchard, it's very difficult, because that's a main corridor.
I didn't see any school officials. The officer that's there is in with the voting booth. That's fine in the auditorium. But nowhere you can walk through the whole school.
You're talking about the Blanchard, right? Yeah, no, I was talking about the Miller also, but the Miller we specifically have some. It's more difficult for us at the Blanchard because of the voting location, and we just can't divert kids away from a certain area, otherwise they won't be able to have access to other areas of the building. So,
I understand that.
yeah, so the issue is we need to find a solution to that.
So that's something, Hugh, that we have to work on, and we hope people understand when we do come into the schools. And like Bill was saying, one of the key components with our SRO program is we don't just go to the academy, we spread it out, and we do an inspection of the schools. And some of the as you can imagine, some of the challenges that we have about checking in through the doors is the common courtesy of holding the door for somebody. That's tough to break, especially my generation, you hold it. But it's a tough thing to understand that you have to shut the door and, I'm sorry, you gotta get buzzed in or checked in. That's a tough thing to break. And some of the other challenges are, quite frankly, the kids propping the doors open, you know, so it's a quick in and out type of deal. So we're working on it, and I know Bill and his staff is working on it with the schools as well. Any other questions about the school security, town security?
One of the, you have the whole plan for security, but there are certain times of year where most of the faculty are at meetings, and this past year, a friend of mine who's substituting was saying that there was so few school people there, and they were freaked out because they said, if something ever happened, no one has any idea what to do.
This is during a normal school day, but
Yeah, when you have your,
the professional development.
yeah, when you had it where you had like, almost everybody out.
So I saw if this is you're talking about a professional development.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, where the staff may congregate at one particular school.
Right.
For professional development.
Yeah, when you have over, 50%
Right, and you
are
have those
substitutes.
students, there are those
No,
students.
no, this is when there's substitutes. Well, I don't know what it is, but they do have days, trust me, that there are more than half the teachers are not there and they're substitutes.
I've never been
We couldn't physically accommodate that.
Well, I can give you the name of the person.
Right, yeah, please, because there has never been a time when basically half the staff has been out of the building. So if you can give me that information, I appreciate it.
Does anybody else have any other concerns or questions?
That's the 5-minute warning to the end of the session.
Val?
If we have freight trains that travel through town, they go through the village center, and they go along Stony Brook, is there any kind of plan in the event of a derailment, a chemical spill? I mean, are we prepared in that sense?
Val, every incident is different, but one of the things that some of the planning, and I know Richard was around, we've had these derailments and these concerns in the past, but not to the extent where we had an evacuation. We do, through emergency management, have evacuation routes. We do have an evacuation plan set up, but it's actually getting people to understand what it is and notifying that there's a problem. And that's some of the stuff that we were dealing with earlier about the code red calls, the AM radio, and getting that information out. We're not too concerned about the evacuation routes because we would direct people on those issues. But I know, Rich, you've dealt with several of those.
Yeah, I mean, years ago, probably, we were just talking with Chip, I mean, we go back a lot of years, so probably the late 70s, early 80s, that we've had train derailments with, some hazardous materials that have leaked in Graniteville and stuff. And we've had to do evacuations then. Since that time, we've been able to, the state's been able to establish a regional hazmat response team. And it happens in different tiers depending on, the level of urgency or the demand of what might be the product and so forth. But that's just a phone call away for us to get those teams to start coming to this town. Just like Tom has the NEMLAC group, we have that regional hazmat team that we've had we have one member that's been on this team that works on our department. He's been on that team for 23 years. And so we've had that, and they bring all of the different resources that we need for hazmat, and there's 6 regional hazmat teams across the state of Massachusetts. And we can bring any or all of those into this community if we have to. And it's a tremendous amount of group. It's a huge group of people to be able to facilitate a hazardous material incident. But all of our people are trained to the awareness level, and we have all these other technicians that are available that can get into those suits and start mitigating a situation if we need to.
Val, back in the day, and I think I was around when he was talking about, I think it was a fireman, we had an overturned cart train, and it had a leak, in one of the trains, and one of the firemen went up with a Nerf football and plugged the leak with a Nerf football. Those days are done.
Yeah.
No, may I just say also in our school emergency plans, we have evacuation plans to evacuate to a school that is nearby, but also a school on the other side of town in case of that incident. We have plans for chemical, biological, and radiological events in the schools where the administrators know what to do in terms of sealing off doors, shutting off the HVAC equipment, sometimes moving to upper levels because some of those gases are heavier than air and settle at lower levels. So we want to get sometimes staff and kids at as high a level as possible.
Do you practice that? Your custodial staff actually practice?
We don't practice sealing up. We haven't actually practiced, but we have materials to do that.
I know we're wrapping this up, so if anybody has any questions or concerns that you don't feel comfortable speaking up, don't hesitate to come and give us a call. I'm going to stick around.
We're going to be here for a while.
I'm going to stick around if you want to come up and just chat. We're available. I thank you very much for turning out. I think it's a great process, and to get the feedback from you is critical for us. So thank you.
Thank you.